Yes!
You know, despite the almost innumerable shortcomings of Season 12 and the Beyond Light DLC, there are a lot of things that I'm enjoying during this era of the game. Now back in Season 10 when the Conqueror Seal and the Grandmaster Nightfalls made their debut, my inner masochist came out when I realized that I was head over heels in love with this level of challenge. And after I obtained the Conqueror Seal back then, I reveled in the success of accomplishment, but I quickly realized that I wanted that same level of difficulty that the Grandmaster Nightfalls brought to exist in other parts of the game. Now, as annoyingly difficult the Grandmaster Nightfalls were, I enjoyed the fact that you had to change your loadout and strategy in each strike and approach them differently than one another. So, when I found out that the Master Rank Lost Sectors were a thing, I was pretty excited because it was pretty gratifying to know that Bungie made something completely out of nothing, because Lost Sectors have always been pretty pointless. But this time around, you can really put your PvE expertise to the test by completing a Master Rank Lost Sector and simultaneously nab the triumphs known as Solo Lost Sector Mastery and Master of the Hunt. Solo Lost Sector Mastery tasks you to complete a Master Rank Lost Sector alone. That means that you have to do it by yourself with no fire team, and yeah, you probably get the point. And Master of the Hunt requires you to simply complete a Master Rank Lost Sector. This one can be done with a fire team, but I figured that it would be more optimal to knock out two birds with one stone and simply do it by yourself, especially if you're after the Splintered Seal. Also, there's one final thing I wanted to say before I get into the guide. When I'm going over the suggested loadout, I do my best to avert fixating on seasonal mods from the Season 12 artifact. At the time this video was going live, it's currently Season 12, but the majority of the weapon and armor options that I'll discuss will be viable despite what season we're currently in. Now, I've noticed that in the past, a lot of my videos are outdated and the information didn't remain viable seasons after they release, and that's because of how many updates the game has went through. But I assure you that the majority of the information in this video will be useful provided that Bungie doesn't overhaul the game again. But at last, let's go ahead and get it in. First things first, I want to talk about the loadout that I use. Be advised that you do not have to use the same exact loadout that I use, but I can confirm that if you decide to, you won't be disappointed at all. Now in Season 12, we have an artifact mod known as Surge Eater, which refunds your grenade energy whenever you disrupt the Overload champion. There's a very useful combination consisting of your grenade and divinity that I'll discuss in a moment. If you're using a stasis or solar subclass, you'll be happy to know that thermal overload is also an amazing option. This mod gives solar and stasis grenades the ability to disrupt overload champions and decreases how much damage they deal to you. Now thermal overload and Surge Eater do stack, and together they make overload champions an absolute joke. Again, for the sake of not focusing too much on Season 12 mods, since I would like this video to be useful for the entirety of the time that these Master Rank Lost Sectors are in the game, you can easily get the job done without these mods or with whatever artifact mods you have available for the current season. But with or without these mods, your grenades will be incredibly useful here. Now when it comes to the loadout that I'm recommending, your anti-barrier capable weapon will have to be in your kinetic slot because your energy slot will be reserved for the divinity. Now, one of my personal favorite kinetic weapons for PvE is the Sacred Providence Pulse Rifle from the Garden of Salvation raid. Now during Season of the Hunt, pulse rifles are strong against barrier champions, and the 4-round burst aggressive frame pulses hit like a truck. This archetype has really good base range and stability, making it ideal for long distance engagements, which is how most if not all of your firefights in this Lost Sector would be, because close quarter combat will get you killed a lot. Now, my Sacred Providence rolled with Outlaw, Kill Clip, and a Stability Masterwork, so it's a combination of strong and easy to control. Now I enjoy using this weapon, but I'm by no means suggesting that you absolutely have to get your hands on one. But if you own a Sacred Providence, this is the weapon I would personally suggest using over any other pulse rifle for an in-game activity like this. Of course, whatever weapons are anti-barrier capable after Season of the Hunt has concluded will be whatever you will have to make do with regardless. Now, in Season 12, I'd also recommend Cold Denial since it's a high impact pulse rifle as well, and it hits really hard. Now, if you're watching this video outside of Season 12, hopefully the anti-barrier weapons are mid to long range weapons, because you'll want to avoid using closer range weapons if possible. The reason why I suggested for your anti-barrier weapon to be in your kinetic slot is because of the Garden of Salvation raid exotic weapon known as Divinity. Since overload champions are something that you'll unfortunately have to deal with in this Lost Sector, Divinity and its ability to disrupt overload champions and debuff enemies at the same time will make this weapon the MVP of your loadout. Now, if you don't own Divinity, I would highly suggest that you get your hands on it, because this weapon alone will make the Lost Sector and future raids and other in-game PvE activities much easier. Trust me. Now, you'll barely be using a heavy weapon, but the one that I suggest would be the Fallen Guillotine Sword. If you already own this weapon, that's amazing and you have nothing to worry about. But if you don't own it, it's not that big of a deal because it's one of the weapons in the legendary engram loot pool, so if you're lucky, you'll get it eventually. The most ideal role you'll want consists of Whirlwind Blade and Relentless Strikes, but due to the fact that you won't be using this weapon that often here, alongside the fact that you'll only be using it to quickly finish off enemies, overall DPS is completely irrelevant. Now to be honest, you can use whatever legendary sword you want here, but since Falling Guillotine deals void damage, it'll do the best job at taking care of the only shielded enemy in this lost sector. So a little bit ago, I said that there's a useful technique that will make this lost sector much easier. There's several overload champions in this lost sector. The technique we're going to utilize will be referred to as the strat. And again, all it consists of is the divinity and your grenade. Remember when I said that your grenades would be very useful here? Well, this is why. Now, I strongly recommend using an area of effect damage over time grenade, such as Vortex, Solar, Pulse, or Dust Field. I recommend these the most because overload champions can heal themselves if you stop inflicting damage to them for a few seconds, and the damage over time from these grenades will prevent that from happening. Okay, so in order to perform the strat, you'll want to tap Fire Divinity at the overload champion to stun it, then quickly throw your grenade. You'll want to continue tap Fire Divinity because for one, it saves you a ton of ammo, and for two, you can still apply the Judgment debuff cage instead of holding the trigger down. The cool thing about the grenade plus divinity combo is that the grenade will deal crit damage from divinity's Judgment perk. Now if you prefer, you can throw your grenade first then tap Fire Divinity afterwards, but I always lead with divinity because the overload champions have the annoying tendency to teleport either way, and it's a common occurrence for them to hide behind cover. You'll end up disrupting each overload champion about 2 or 3 times before you're able to kill it because there are cooldown periods between each disruption, so do your best to backpedal to stay alive. The overload Minotaur's torch cannon can easily one-shot you, so keep that in mind. But yeah, provided that you use the strat on every overload champion, they won't be that difficult to kill. I didn't say anything about which Guardian class to use because all 3 classes have an equal opportunity of getting the job done. When it comes to your subclass of choice, use something that you're comfortable with, but I highly suggest that you use whatever one-off shutdown super that your Guardian class has access to. I would never suggest using a roaming super because the enemies here are super tanky and you might have to hit them once or twice to kill them, and it's super easy to get one shot out of your super. For warlocks, I would suggest top or bottom tree Nova Bomb. Top tree Nova Bomb deals a ton of damage and enables you to supercharge your grenades, which works amazingly with the strat if you can get the timing down. Bottom tree is amazing because the Vortex Nova Bomb does damage over time, and you can consume your grenades to replenish your health to maximize survivability. Now if you're brave enough, you can take advantage of the Dawn Chorus and Bottom tree Dawn Blade combo, or Geomax stabilizers with Chaos Reach. Now if I had to pick one of the two, it would definitely be Geomax with Chaos Reach because you have the option of canceling your super and using the rest later. Titans. Y'all have a decent amount of options as well. First of all, if you don't have the exotic Titan chest armor known as Armamentarium, visit Xur every week until you get it to drop from his exotic engram or until he sells it. This exotic armor gives you 2 grenade charges of any grenade, which is amazing in every sense of the word. Now it doesn't matter which grenades you decide to use because having 2 of them will make things much easier. The Controlled Demolition perk from the Code of the Commander skill tree is one of my favorites because when you deal void ability damage to enemies, a void detonator is attached to them and it explodes when you deal damage to the enemy. Combining this with magnetic grenades, you'll get 3 explosions from each grenade instead of 2. For the supers, I would suggest Thunder Crash and Ward of Dawn. Thunder Crash is the only one-off shutdown super option that you have as a Titan, and it's pretty strong and reliable provided that you don't get killed out of it. And Ward of Dawn is one of the best panic buttons in the game because it'll do the best job at keeping you alive, and it gives you 30% extra weapon damage. Hunters have a lot of options here too. Celestial Nighthawk plus Bottom Tree Golden Gun for that guaranteed insane damage, as well as Blade Barrage, which is amazing for clearing a horde of tightly grouped together adds or boss damage. You can't go wrong. Now Top Tree Night Stalker is also amazing because if you take that route, you get the ability to dodge and become invisible. Now there are times where you will run into danger and might not be able to escape in time to survive, but you can never go wrong by becoming completely imperceptible to the enemies. The Hunter class was the only of the 3 that was given a one and done stasis super in the form of Silence and Squall, which lingers around long enough to keep you safe from almost everything. So you can go that route too. You can choose whatever lost sector you want, but it's hard to deny that the Bunker E15 lost sector located in the Eventide ruins on Europa is the most simple route to take. There aren't many enemies here, and even though match game is one of the modifiers, there's only one single shielded enemy that you have to deal with here, that being a void shielded Minotaur. There's also a decent amount of overload champions here, which are incredibly annoying, but on the bright side, there's only 2 barrier champions in the master version of this lost sector, and they're insanely easy to defeat. Now the first room here, you'll be fighting Fallen, and it'll be the last time you'll be doing that since the rest of this lost sector is all Vex. There's a few dregs and a couple vandals here. They aren't too difficult to kill, but you'll come to find out that they have the most accurate grenade placement. Out of any game series I've ever played, the Destiny and Halo games have the most insane AI because they can snipe with pinpoint flawless precision, and their grenade placement is so on point, I would need more than words to explain it. The dregs and vandals here may not be too threatening, but again, their grenade placement is, so do yourself a favor and stay as far back in the shipping container as you can and pick off each enemy one by one with your primary weapon. The only enemy in this area that'll give you problems is the Overload Champion. Like I said before, when it comes to the first room, you'll want to take out all of the dregs and vandals before you take on the Overload Captain. The Captain is incredibly irritating at times, so you might have to stun him a few times to make it easier to fight the other enemies. I found myself shooting him twice with Divinity, then quickly taking care of the other adds before the stun wears off. Of course, I had to do this multiple times because the regular red bar adds are a lot more resilient. Now, be advised that you won't be able to skip this room because the door here will remain locked until all the enemies here are defeated. But anyways, once you're done, move over to the second room. Well, technically this isn't really the second room. The area here is a small section that connects to another section that connects to the actual second room. But once you're here, look over to the left and shoot the Radiant Tesseract connected to a large containment cube. Once it's destroyed, the containment box will release two friendly AI known as Braytech security frames. Let me tell you right now that these guys put in absolute work. This is a moment so rare in my gaming career that I can actually count the other moments on a single hand. And I'm referring to the fact that these security frames have AI that's actually useful. They can't die, and the enemies in this lost sector can and will aggro to them instead of singling you out because, once again, Destiny's enemy AI is insane when it comes to in-game PvE activities. Now, after you release the security frames, take out the small group of Vex goblins here and move downstairs. Remember the one elemental shielded enemy I mentioned earlier? He's in here, and this is what you will want to do to take him out quickly and easily. Take out your fallen guillotine and stand behind this structure right here for a brief second. Then pop out so the Minotaur can see you. The moment that he does, he'll start teleporting to close in the gap. At that point in time, take cover, then hit him with your charge attack, and it should kill him instantly. Proceed forward down a descending slope into the true second room. Try not to rush recklessly into the next area because everything here can and will one-shot you. Peek around the corner slightly to destroy the Tesseract to free another Braytech security frame. Be careful overcommitting around the corner because to the right, there's two Vex Hobgoblins and their line rifles are a huge problem. So I would suggest backing up a bit and taking out the Hobgoblin on the ascended structure ahead of you. You can clear this room however you like, but I would honestly suggest taking out these two Hobgoblins I mentioned earlier, as well as a small horde of goblins to the right. Also, on the bottom right hand corner of this room, there's more Braytech security frames for you to free. When you take out the goblins in the back of the room, get as far back as you can because a Vex Cyclops will spawn in, and if you aren't careful, its eye blast will reduce you to nothing. This enemy's only vulnerable spot is his eye, which is his crit spot, but the rest of his body can be damaged by ability damage and explosives. I hate Cyclopses, so I took it upon myself to kill it with my super because you want to get rid of this thing as quickly as possible. Now once the Cyclops is dead, move your way up to the overhead area where one of the Hobgoblins was to free another Braytech security frame. Around this time, all enemies should be dead in this room for the exception of the two barrier Hobgoblins, but they're very simple to take care of. Damage them enough to the point where they deploy their barrier, then break it with your primary weapon. While it's stunned, move in and lay into it with your sword. Now if you don't deal enough damage to kill it, it should be vulnerable to a finisher. Congrats, you've destroyed the only barrier champions in the entire lost sector. After that, move over to the right and proceed to the final room. Well, don't actually step foot into the final room because you'll probably die within 2 seconds. Simply hang back before the entrance and pick off all the enemies with your primary weapon. For the exception of the Overload champions and the boss itself, the only enemy that'll give you problems here is the Vex Wyvern. The fact that this thing has a red health bar is fake news because it's about as annoying and resilient as a champion. It has a ton of health, and if you don't want to use a super on it, you'll really have no choice but to chip away at its HP with your primary weapon. I don't suggest attacking it with your sword either because its stomp attack can kill you in a single hit. But yeah, once you kill it, you'll only have the boss and 4 Overload champions to deal with. Your primary weapon's anti-barrier rounds can actually pierce the boss's rotating shield, which is consoling because it makes it easier to hang back and slowly chisel away at his health, which is exactly what I did. Now, there's one important detail I want to mention. You only have to kill all the champions in this lost sector in order to have a chance at getting an exotic armor piece. If you simply want the completion, you can just kill the boss and hightail it to the lost sector chest to complete it because the Triumphs don't care if you kill all the champions or not. All you need to do is complete it and that's it. But I figured that since we made it this far, you might as well kill all the champions too. Now, if it already wasn't blatantly obvious, the Overload champions are very annoying. I'm pretty sure I reiterated that a lot of times, especially the Overload Minotaurs, because their torch cannon does insane splash damage and will always one-shot you. The strat is going to be your best friend here, because once the Overload champions recover from being stunned, they relentlessly rush you and will not stop until you're dead. So your best bet is to backpedal and use the slope right before the entrance to the final room is covered. Pay attention to the notifications in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, because every time a champion spawns, it'll say it here. After all the Overload champions are dead, finish the boss off and claim the Lost Sector chest. And there you have it. You've officially soloed a Master Rank Lost Sector and didn't lose your mind in the process. Well, at least I don't think you did. Well, everybody, that does it for this one. I really enjoyed putting this guide together, and I hope that I was successful in assisting you with getting closer to the Splintered seal. Anyways, if you made it to the end of this video and enjoyed what you watch, do me a favor and thumb wrestle that like button until it turns blue. And if you're new to my neck of the woods, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon so you don't miss a video of the most elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy.
Can redeem you and me, don't you wanna feel something? And oh, I miss loving you, but I need to live my own truth. I wanna feel it all brand new. I found a little something from Miss Angelou. Take the good and hold it near to you, and let go of all that burdens you.